Afternoon, everybody. Afternoon, all of you lovely people watching wherever you are. Hi, Mum, probably. Hey, Danny. Hey, Michael. Hey, Ginny. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Hi, Chris.
Yeah, all good.
Whereabouts in the world are you at the minute, Danny? Are you up in Manchester with
I am.
Steve?
I'm in sunny Manchester. It's baking. It's about 30 degrees. There's no rain at all. It's not freezing cold. I've not got the heat on full blast.
Definitely typical Manchester weather. Fantastic. Whereabouts are you, Michael? You recently moved, haven't you? You were in Manchester, weren't you?
No. Yes, I'm still in Manchester a lot, but today I'm in Dudley or Dudley.
That's it. You said it the right way around.
I think so. I'm trying to acclimatise. I seem to pick up all different accents, which is why you can't, recognise a twang of the Norfolk accent that I originally had. So
that explains it. You recently did a lunch down in Norwich, didn't you, for agency leaders, right?
It was for David at Pimento.
Ah, yes.
But agency, different agency founders, leaders, and so forth. There, that was fun. Enjoyed it. Got to talk about AI, which probably will be something that will be touched on here.
I have a feeling we might cover that slightly when we're talking about risks. Hey, and whereabouts are you, Ginny?
I'm just across, I think the Pennines, is it, to everyone? Over in Harrogate in North Yorkshire. So, still as miserable as it is in Manchester, I think, by the sounds of it, even though we're across the way.
It's a relatively small island. We're not really all getting very different weather from day to day, are we? It's, I don't think I've had a dry dog in 3 days, should we say?
Yes.
They're permanently damp right now. But that's the risk we take living in the UK. But we're here to talk about growing an agency, growing digital agencies, and growing the businesses, and kind of growing through risk and de-risking as you do go. I think we can all agree, everyone watching this, Michael, Ginny, Danny, I think we can agree that there are multiple vectors of risk at all times when you're running any business. None so stark in the days of recession, none so stark in the days of tech change and all sorts of things like that. And I think that there's plenty of things that between all of us with our levels of expertise in different areas will have a bit of an understanding on. Before we do kick off, so that for the two people in the world that don't know who you guys are, if you don't mind giving us a little bit of a wee elevator pitch and an intro. So start with you, Ginny. Who are you? What's your name, and where do you come from?
Do we win like a speedboat or something?
Cuddly toy, actually.
Yeah, all right, okay, yeah. I'm Ginny Nicholls. I run Interim Digital. We are a collective of over 100 senior level freelancers, all ex-agency, who support other agencies and brands as and when they need an extra pair of senior hands across performance channels. So that can be SEO, PPC, content, social media, and anything in between, really, that relates to performance or digital marketing.
Awesome. And things probably you probably get a decent temperature of how things are going in agencies from a growth point of view, because I'm guessing that as an agency grows quickly, they need more interim digital people, and in the times of strife, you probably get quite a lot of freelancers who come to you to join your ranks for the next burst of growth. What about you, Danny? I know that you're in Manchester, but what else?
I head up the corporate team at Blazers ETL, so we're a law firm. We're based principally in the northwest, Manchester and Liverpool, but we have some office in London. We're part of a global network, which is the ETL part of the name, which is European accounting, tax and law, but we have worldwide reach if we need it. We principally act for owner-managers, SME space, and a large part of my job heading the corporate team is being part of our specialist creative digital marketing team. So we do a lot in the agency world, right from startup, all the commercial stuff, the employment stuff, fundraising, employee incentivization, contracts with freelancers, all the way through to sales. I've been involved in buying and building a multifaceted full service agency, listing it on a stock market, selling it off and delisting it again. So full spectrum risks from right at the start to all the way through getting out and making your millions as an agency owner, hopefully.
Well, I mean, one person to keep in your digital Rolodex for that time that you list your agency people. Michael, in Dudley, tell us all about what you guys do at Riskbox.
Yeah, so set up Riskbox just over 10 years ago. So we've just had our birthday party, which was nice. Thank you. And we're a commercial insurance broker who focus on agencies and tech business. And we genuinely do, because that's where most of our clients are from. And we look after them from the freelancer all the way through to the large owner managed business with overseas offices, with several hundred employees. So we look at the whole thing, and we deal with a lot of them as they grow and change and make mistakes and forget about things and remember things and throw some curveballs at you and cry on the phone and stuff. So yeah, we get to see a few of the things that I think we're going to talk about today.
Yep. And so, having worked with all of you in your various different ways, I can honestly say that that if you're watching this now as an agency leader, yes, you've probably got your insurance from a Google search and picked Hiscox. Insurance is the boring bit, I'm afraid, and Michael's not afraid of agreeing to that, but it is absolutely essential, and you really do get what you pay for in terms of the types of the quality there. And having bought from you as a customer when with the agency, but also sent lots of agencies your way, I think that everyone can agree that it's the thing you don't want to need, but when you do use it, it's important. Similarly, I've worked with Danny and Steve, or Steve actually directly, and I know that again, it's in times of trouble you've got the right people behind you, but it's better to have them beforehand to de-risk some of these things. And I know about 95% of the freelancers that work with Ginny, and I know that they're bloody great. So I can safely say that if you need a freelancer, go to Ginny. So we're going to talk a little bit now about like the kinds of risks that agencies have in a bit more sort of general notes. But I thought the best thing to do for everyone watching was to kind of just get the picture of the way that we're going to be looking at quite a lot of this, because all businesses, all agencies have the same components. There's the finance, the marketing, the sales, the operations, the people, and then the legal/compliance aspect of things. And all of these need to be in some kind of balance in some way or another. If you have great finance but terrible operations, you will soon have terrible finance. If you have great marketing but bad sales, your cost of sale will be terrible, so you have bad finance. If you have great sales and great marketing but terrible operations, your people will be bad, and people will hate you, and then all sorts of other things will happen, most of which ends up turning into some kind of legal thing, whether it be a staff-related thing or a client-related thing, or God forbid, some kind of data-related thing. So all of these go hand in hand with all parts of business growth. And with the current state of UK economy being currently in recession, although I did hear positive news today, it's only going to knock on anyone that works in the marketing sector probably quite hard, quite quickly. So some of the stuff that we'll cover today will be about the longer term aspects of de-risking for growth. But in the anyone watching this, you should be considerate of what's happening now and how that's going to impact the next 6, 8, 9, 12 plus months into the future. So should we talk about some of the risks from each of our own kind of perspectives based on the things that we see? I know that we speak to a lot of agencies as well, and you kind of get a vibe of what's going on outside of your own kind of skill sets. So like for me, I'll speak to the finance aspect for the moment. There's an awful lot of agencies that I'm working with that until they have a look at a real cash flow forecast are not realizing the risk of their efforts. You might work your backside off for an entire year and not realize that you're doing it all for minus 6% growth over the course of the year, or that you might owe the bank a couple of quid 6 months down the line. And to de-risk your growth from that point of view, you should get a cash flow forecast. There's a free one on our site. It's not gated. You can just click the link and download it. But knowing where your money's coming in and where your money's going out is only going to make it easier to hire and do your sales and do your marketing, because in these kinds of times you need to keep the marketing and the sales going. And Danny, what do you typically see in terms of the typical risks that agencies see as they grow? You know, you say from startup to listing and then delisting, etc. The whole way along there's all sorts of different things. Are there some things which remain current regardless of size?
I think, well, things that you look at when you're setting out on the journey, you know, whether you're setting up a new agency, growing or getting involved as, you know, in a new business, you look at ownership. That's a thing, and that comes up and rears its ugly head. You know, we've had strange situations. I've been involved in an agency acquisition for a client where there was 3 owners. One of them had left the business sometime before, had sold their 3rd shareholding, or so it seemed. But when it came to it, they hadn't. Nothing had been done, and somebody else owned a 1/3 of the business. So you talk about working for -6% growth. You work for some growth, and then you've got to give a 1/3 of it away, which is what happened. And of course, when you go to that person who hasn't necessarily realised, they've not signed the legal papers at the time, they want their palms crossed with silver once again to give it you back. Other things, you know, there's always something contractual, and I look at both sides of that. Contractual relationships with your clients. What are you delivering? What if you sign a contract and you are flying and you're very excited, you put a lot of cost, time and expense into getting ready for it, and then the client, often due to financial circumstances, you know, the first sign of a recession, marketing budget gets cut, we're not going to go ahead with that project. If there's nothing in the contract saying you can charge them for the costs you've incurred up to that point, you can end up facing losses. You know, and similarly with employees and contractors, you know, having the contractual arrangements in place, the agreements that set out what happens if and when, it's all very important. And that protects value, financial value, and of course, your time as a manager.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things which we might come on to at some point throughout here, but just I get asked this a lot, and the answer is probably it depends, as it often is. But almost everyone, if they've got the best contract ever, so let's say they've gone to Glaciers, they've got the best contract for the services that they have. Over the course of time, it's a Word file, for example. Over the course of time, there's edits made, there's changes made. How do you recommend that agencies look at these sorts of things? How often do they need a proper review? Because I don't know about you guys in here, maybe Michael, because, you know, insurance and stuff. You look at fine print, but I can't tell whether a whole section's been removed sometimes just because I think it's the current original version. What's the advice there?
What I'd recommend there is, I mean, number one, try and work on your own terms. And that isn't always easy, because you will get some clients, particularly the bigger clients that you may be going after, will say, no, you must operate on our terms that they are. But if you are in the position where you can put your terms forward, have a master services contract that governs things. Governs the whole arrangement, governs your deliverables, your payment terms, your liabilities. And then if you're going to vary that for a client because they don't like a particular term, do it in a call-off agreement. So you say your master services agreement, your terms and conditions apply, except we're going to tweak this and this for this project, or we're going to add this and this because of a particular deliverable on a long-term service agreement. Whatever it may be, then you've got your master that doesn't change. And anything that does change and is bespoke to a customer or a specific project is in a small document that you have for each time you enter into something. It's obviously an ideal, but that's what I recommend.
And I must say, there was one time where we had this like big fish dangling over us when we were running the agency, and they were forcing their terms on us. And I must say that one of the probably better decisions that I made it without knowing it at the time was refusing to do so. Lost the potential client, but when I found where they went later, it turned out that it had gone where my gut had gone. And I'm not saying that just because they force terms on you that they're trying to do something dodgy, but in this case, it was a risk I dodged. Ginny, how are you? Just to bridge the contracty bit. You work with, say, agencies who have their own contracts for freelance and consultants, and freelancers who have their own. Is there some kind of alignment that you need to do there to make sure that no one's accidentally upsetting anyone else or anything like that?
Yeah, it can get quite kind of chasing your tail a bit, because it's who signs at what NDA, who signs what contract with who, and is it IR35, is it not IR35, and are we an agency or are we a contractor? So we try and keep it as simple as possible, and have individual contractor agreements between interim and the individual contractors. And then we tend to, and Danny will probably tell me this is wrong now, but and then we tend to have agreements with the agencies that we work with as well. Occasionally, the agencies prefer kind of things like NDAs separately as well. Everyone within the interim community has to sign an NDA specifically and individual contractor agreements before they can work with our clients anyway. But just as belt and braces, I think some agencies do prefer those kind of direct to contractor NDA situations too. Interesting you were saying there, Danny and Chris, about the kind of that David and Goliath situation where freelancers are often, the smaller minnow, and agencies try and push the 60-day payment terms on them, and and things that are big businesses fine, but when you're a one-on-one freelancer, 60-day payment or even 30-day payment sometimes is pretty tough to bear. So we're not legal experts by any stretch, and if big agencies try and do that, we haven't had the 60-day yet, but we have had some terms which haven't felt right. We have kind of sought external people just to make sure that we're doing things as we should. But so far, touch wood, all of the wood, the agencies we've worked for have been pretty decent at holding their end of the bargain.
And you originally came from an agency background, didn't you?
Yeah.
As you were going through that and now working with agencies, what kinds of risks are you seeing that people are kind of navigating at the minute? What are the things that seem to be coming up a little bit more than the recent past?
Yeah, I think that the biggest difference is the competitiveness within our world for recruitment and for good headcount, because the talent pool is huge. The agencies are all fighting for the same people, and what used to be kind of real nice to haves for employees are now just day-to-day benefits. So, remote working, so what? Flexi working, not even a thing, because we're remote anyway. So, massive salaries are coming in, which obviously from a financial perspective is huge for agencies to consider. So they're all fighting over the same people. The people have stronger negotiation skills because everybody's commanding higher salaries. So the knock-on impact for that for agencies is the fact that they will have much larger cash flow issues by employing someone who may have been on 25, 30k a few years ago and now asking for 40, 45k. And the additional risk that comes with that is also the way that agencies are positioning themselves. So should you be a niche agency or should you be a full service agency? If you're full service, how do you employ an SEO or a PPCer if you don't have any SEOs or PPCers? It's like me trying to interview someone for Daniel Michaels' business. I haven't got a clue what they do. So how could I vet someone in those guys' industries? So why should a marketing manager know how good an SEOer is? So it's a real sticky situation for these agencies to be in, to recruit and B, know how to recruit the right kind of people.
Yeah, and something I wrote it down so I didn't forget, because I think it's actually pulls really quite closely into Michael's world, where you've got agencies where staff are working in office, out of office, in public, in a coffee shop with a company laptop or a personal laptop, or a freelancer who's part of a team. As agencies are growing, there's the risk there from where the heck are they and where's my, how do you ensure that kind of stuff, Michael? But also you've got when they're not there, because we're in a moment of decline, we've had to make people redundant. How the hell do we make sure that we're still compliant from all of our data point of view? Go, Michael, tell us how the hell it works.
Well, the good news is for most of that stuff, it's actually pretty simple and straightforward. So where you're working from, whether it's at home, whether it's hybrid, whether it's in an office, as long as things are administered correctly, it's pretty simple and straightforward. Doesn't cost much more. And obviously, if you've got employees and able to get injured or do something that damages someone, it doesn't really matter, providing the policies are set up properly. So that's actually one of the slightly easier parts of dealing with current change. There are more sort of permanent issues that we see, and some of them sort of tie in a bit with what Danny's sort of saying about the contracts that we find out. So we try to educate clients to come to us with contracts, because contracts will change, and unfortunately, agency owners sometimes think that the insurance that they get from whoever it happens to be will automatically cover them for everything.
Yeah,
but it won't. I mean, what if the deliverables are different? What if they're dealing with someone in a different territory? Or what we find quite a lot is that agencies will sign contracts where with, say, US companies, and there'll be things in there such as waivers of subrogation, which basically
what the heck does that mean?
It basically, so subrogation is where your insurer pays out, and the insurer then looks to recoup the money from the party who's at fault, basically. The trouble is, when they've got a waiver of subrogation, it means that stops. So insurers who are insuring someone want to insure an agency that controls its risks, not an agency that's on the line for risks of other people cocking up.
Got it.
So the crux on that is that most insurers won't agree to a US jurisdiction and a waiver of subrogation. So we find so many clients who will come and tell us this, and it's like, well, you're in breach of contract straight away.
Yeah,
you've signed up to this. You've said you've got this. Oh, and by the way, if you're with, say, a lot of insurers, so for example, Hiscox, they will refuse. They will not agree to a waiver of subrogation or professional indemnity for a US contract. They just won't do it. So you'll have to then move. So things like this, they're all stuff that can be managed. They're all things that can be be tweaked and changed. But one of the, I mean, that probably bounces over to Danny in a second. Anyway, is that there's always the perception that going back to the other party and saying, well, I can't agree to this, that it's the big companies that won't agree to it. Whereas we actually seem to find it seems to be a little bit different. So sometimes the big ones will actually, no, we've got people in here specific. We've got legal counsel, understand what you're talking about. There is no exposure to that. We're fine. Whereas it's the smaller ones who don't have that. And it's like, nope, you got to sign it. You got to sign it. It's been agreed. That's it. We will have no leeway whatsoever. And that's what we see. So I don't know if...
I think as you grow, the unknowns become a little bit harder to identify, because that I'm not even going to try and pronounce what you just said, because I can't remember exactly how it sounded. But that I know that's a concept. I didn't know what the word was. And as you grow any business, as you grow your agency, you don't know these things until it potentially, like you say, you're speaking to some clients and you don't know that they're in breach. They don't know they're in breach of their own contracts because, so like how like Danny, I know that like the legal space is vast, and in your space, even where it's kind of niche down on the media end, it's still very vast. How are you helping like agencies, and how are agencies should agencies help themselves from a like find out what they don't know without kind of adding another big pile to it?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to get past, the excitement of having that big fish on the hook and reeling it in. And often, we have to, recommend, advise, you need to look at these things. You've got your big clients. It's great for marketing your business elsewhere. You're acting for a big institution. You're acting for a big international corporate, whatever it might be. But yeah, how do we make it easier? I mean, we particularly, Steve, who and Michael works closely with as well, on exactly what he was just talking about. We fire contracts between us to advise clients, but all we can do is try and make it easy and make it accessible. And it's a distressed purchase in 7.5, 8 out of 10 cases, and it shouldn't be. And our industry needs to realise that people don't want to spend money on lawyers, but spending a bit of money on lawyers at the outset, bits of money with lawyers at the outset might save a lot of money with lawyers down the line when you find out these breaches and these potential issues, and insurance doesn't cover this and whatever it might be. And we act on both sides of that. We try and make it easy. We are launching, and we have specific for this sector a product, One Glaziers we are calling it. It is sort of a club where you get the benefit of easy access straight into experts for a discounted, we discount fees, and we sit down with clients and say, look, you can buy a certain amount of time, you'll get a quick and easy response from us. We don't have to go through the headaches every time of, we're so heavily regulated. We've got to spend 2 hours setting up a file for clients sometimes. But if we get, this membership underway, it's a quick response. You've got a direct phone line into 3 or 4 people in the team. Email, I won't say 24/7 because that puts us under too much pressure. But quick acts, quick response time to email. And just try and make it simple, cost effective. And, we know what areas are going to cause problems. We can look at those areas quickly. And then say, no, you need to speak to Michael about that. Or, oh, hang on, your liability is too high on this one, or you're promising to deliver ownership of some intellectual property that you don't own and you can't. It needs to be licensed. Jurisdictional issues Michael's touched on. We don't really want to be providing services in the UK to clients based in the UK, but working off that client's parents' terms that's based in the States. The States is a much more litigious economy than the UK.
Yeah, and just to sort of move on to the people aspect of growth in an agency, you're kind of acutely more aware of this, I guess, Ginny, than quite a few people, because you see both sides of this coin. You provide support by freelancers into agencies, but you were once in those seats. I don't know how many agencies genuinely aren't completely sure about their capacity and the requirements. And there's circa 37.5-ish hours a week of available billable time, or whatever you want to call it. That's never really the case. And then there's you have a really good week, a good month of leads coming in, and you're looking at your thing and you think, oh, look, Bob and Mary, they've got plenty of time to do that. But actually, it's not just about time. It's about, the mental capacity of context switching and things like that. How often do you get kind of agencies coming to you with like a quick urgent request? And is that something that ebbs and flows over time as well?
Yeah, I think we have a kind of an internal motto where people don't know they need us until they need us, and when they need us, it was last week. So it's really, really, it's really tricky for agencies, because especially and you may well have seen this, Chris, as well, in terms of feedback from agencies, is that lead time to deal closure seems an awful lot longer than it used to be pre kind of COVID times. So if you're going for tenders that, would take up a significant amount of your team's capacity, and that lead time to deal closure is taking several weeks and then going into several months, and you're trying to capacity plan for what might land, and then you maybe have 2 or 3 concurrent pitches that you're going for, and it might land, it might not. You already have these might cancel. It takes up a phenomenal amount of time for agencies just balancing those books, and having an idea of who they've got, when they've got. And it also kind of, I think it brings with it a certain level of fear with what tenders people go for in the first place. Because, there might be agencies who start off as single channel specialists, or, boutique agencies who might do 1 or 2 channels, who could go for other tenders that are predominantly their channels, but with a couple of others. And they could do, if they had 1 more person in-house, or if they had some great partners in freelancers or whatever. But because they don't, they're put off by even going for those tenders in the first place. So it's a constant spinning of plates, and you can forecast your sales pipeline as much as you physically want, but if you don't land that deal, then that's your team either super not stacked or super stacked.
And there's a sort of a push and a pull that happens an awful lot of time, where you might be waiting for a deal to close, but in the meantime, the team couldn't be doing something. But as soon as that deal closes, everyone's hands on deck, and you also need some external support for whatever specialist reasoning. Not supposed to sound boring, but get some proper operational processes in place. They've got to be simple. They've got to be repeatable. The simpler they are, the more repeatable they are, the less screw ups there are that Riskbox need to charge you more on a premium for next year, and Danny needs to help when the client complains and doesn't pay. But the more repeatable, the more consistent, and the more relatable and easy to update they are, the more likelihood is you can assign an estimated amount of time to something and say, if this shopping list of that this client is looking for buys from us, then these blocks and units of time need to be assigned to people. And we can't currently support for that. And we know for a fact that if we want to hire someone smart enough to do this work, it's going to take 2 months of interviews, and potentially, if they're coming from a typical agency now, 3 months of notice period before they can come and work for you. So you need to be capacity planning sometimes 6 months ahead, and that should really boil back down to your strategy of, I've got these plans to get to these places, I've got these people to do it, and that then means that we can consistently generate 100 leads a month at a 5% close rate. So 5 clients a month on 30-ish hours of operational efficiency means we need one person to be hired every 3 months, for example. And the way to consistently grow and de-risk that from a people point of view and an operational point of view is to write a bloody plan and do it. It's get ClickUp, get Monday, get Asana, but actually use it. Don't let it turn into a dumping ground of notes and things like that. And I guess when it comes to, like, I don't know, like Michael, you might see this from a different perspective to Danny, because I know, Danny, you get calls, for example, when big deals coming down and you've got to help someone really quick, but you also probably get calls when the proverbial has hit the fan and something terrible has happened. You, Michael, probably get the lagging effect of that, where the next time you speak to your clients and you go through what's happened in the last year, what's happening in the next year, it's very hard for you necessarily to sort of help plan a premium if they don't know where they're going and there's been a few mishaps along the way, right? Yeah,
absolutely. And I'm always in awe of the agencies that can deal with so many variables, particularly on the your complicated projects. You know, the massive software implementations, or the big app, you know, development, where something, I mean, how you spin that many plates, and obviously with, you know, like this will be obviously for Ginny, how you can do that with some of it when it's internal, some of it when it's an external, to make sure everything's done and everything's prioritized. I mean, that's a real specialism, and that's
I can safely say the analogy of the swan in the lake with its legs going furiously underneath is quite true of that. I think Ginny would agree. Sorry to interrupt you there.
And I'm sure and you know, the services that obviously Ginny provide will be massive as well, because when it comes to an issue and a claim and so forth, agencies are more than happy to say, yeah, it wasn't our fault, it was X, Y, and Z. And you know, sometimes it can be. So to be able to obviously deliver, you know, outsourced and decent support that actually does do what's needed to is important, because back to the insurance, a lot of the insurance policies where you got professional indemnity will cover you where a project goes wrong. You know, it's overrun because X has happened or Y has happened, but they won't do it where you've agreed a contract where you've not resourced to do it and you've not put the right things in place, and you've literally just, it's never going to happen. Well, I say that, but I can think of one agency whose name I will not mention, who got a claim paid for that once and then quickly followed with 2 more in succession, knowing they definitely did not have enough people to resource that, and the claims were paid. And that was,
and there's this again comes down to the you know, some of the boring bits of getting the planning done right, because if you know where you're going, getting there is a lot easier. And I guess, Danny, you'd see less urgency on the wrong end of the spectrum, I guess, if at the right times in growth, the right plan was in place for, I know, if we get to this many people, or we have this many types of clients, we need to speak to Danny and team about this thing. And it's kind of all part of a plan. A lot less oh bugger moments probably happen, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the thing around people is always an issue, and it's hard to manage, even with the best plan. If you're pitching for 5 jobs and 5 jobs come in, you know, how you work that out, I've got no idea. Is your success rate 50%, 40%, 60%, 90%, whatever it might be? But I think, for having the plan, it's the same thing you explained so well, Chris, about having.
Thank you so much. Whatever it was, thank you.
It goes back to what I was saying less clearly about having a contract. You know, you've got your MSA in place, therefore any terms that are varied are in one sheet of paper, not dotted around a 25-page agreement. But other things, you know, with that can go wrong that we see for agencies, particularly when you've got these clients, it's important with your contracts with your clients. It's important with contracts with your employees and your contractors. We've had situations where clients providing 3 or 4 services. Client thinks, actually, we could do that one in-house. Let's try and pinch that person that provides the services so well to our agency. So, we look at that's one of the first things I look for in decent sized contracts. It's so big fish can't come along and steal your best person who is servicing 4 or 5 clients for you. And that really puts you in the mess. So if you have that in a contract saying you actually can't do that whilst you're contracted and for a period of time afterwards, it's like having a covenant with an employee. They won't go and act for a client or a competitor or whatever it might say for a period of time. You can put the same thing in place with clients. You won't poach our staff. You won't poach our contractors that we introduce you to. And vice versa, of course. You make it mutual. Everybody always likes it when it's a mutual obligation, but it protects the agency first and foremost.
And I think, Ginny, just there might be a shade of comparative sort of stuff here with you. How do you help sort of balance that risk when agencies bring in an expert for a specific project? I mean, is it best for those experts that come in from your team to have access to the client? And is there a risk there that something might go awry? Well, what do you typically kind of advise people when it comes to that sort of stuff?
I think, firstly, the biggest thing we say to agencies is don't overthink it. Because they often think, can I ever get someone who's senior enough? Can I trust them in front of a client just because they're not within the 4 walls of my agency? I think it's like, well, hang on a second. All of these people that you're talking about in the freelancer world, via interim anyway, we're ex-agency. They're not aliens. They're not out to steal your clients.
I've met some of these people, mostly developers.
There's that initial fear or overthinking of what position this person is going to play, because all they are is a team member. Forget everything else, whether they're a freelancer or in the 4 walls, and then approach it from a project by project. So, if it's a massively technical migration or app development or whatever it might be, it makes total sense for that person to be in the room with your client, with your team members, etc. If it's more of we act as the agency for agencies and we do the deliverables, and actually we know what the brief is and we can pass it back, it doesn't make sense for there to be a great deal of communication. And it's really the biggest lesson we work on agencies with is being lean and being effective over efficiency. Is it going to help your case to have that person for you to pay to have that person in the room with you? Yes or no? If it is, then great, let's do it. If it's not, don't force it just because you feel like you should have the headcount. And I think that's where a lot of the risk with hiring and in general with agencies has come from, is that old premise of headcount for vanity. And as soon as you look at headcount for vanity, you automatically have more contracts for likes of Danny and Michael to hire people. You've got more overheads and financial impact because you have to hire these people and then say we've got this in-house team. So step that back, then think about exactly what's the bare minimum that you need internally. Who can you partner with to deliver that? How do they operate as part of your team? And then go from there. And it just makes the whole process a lot more simple.
So just sort of a mini round robin in terms of like considerations and compliances and things like that. And like thinking about the current state of things, I'd spoken to probably 3 agencies in the last 2 weeks who've had a client suddenly ghost them out of the blue. And that's not just a contract, that's invoices, that's access to things and all sorts of stuff like that. I remember there was a client a long time ago that they went bust. They didn't tell us because they were very busy going bust, and all sorts of terrible things that happened with all of that. But we looked after their website and we had their domain and everything like that. But there was a lot of stuff that from an access to IP point of view, we retained, and that we didn't have anyone to give it back to. So if, as an agency is growing and working through the current sort of economy and the current ecosystem that we're all sort of working in, what advice would you give them from a considerations point of view? I'll go to Michael first, since you're looking like you're ready to go.
Definitely wasn't. Well, the thing that I would probably come back to again and again and again is the communication with your trusted experts. That it really is that simple, because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know if you need to be compliant with X legislation, but Danny might. It's those sort of things where you just don't know. And from an insurance perspective, I mean, for example, if you're an agency and one of your employees is going to be going out to the States and they're going to be a couple of people that they want to work with over there, do you understand the compliance from an insurance perspective for things such as workers' compensation? Do you know what do you know the trouble you could get in if you don't? Because different countries are different. And it's just things like that. But all of these things usually can be sorted with communication. So be proactive, communicate with people proactively, and you'll find that pretty much everything can be sorted. But it's when it's the last minute and it's a panic that all of a sudden your back's against the wall, that silly decisions are made.
And a lot of that communication has to come from a place of being, as a business leader, you need to be a little bit comfortable with not knowing the answer, and not knowing what the question is often even harder. So speaking to people who know how this kind of inarticulate question, it turns into something important. It's probably more important than ever to have that communication and to kind of look ahead and go, what do I not know is coming up? Danny, in terms of like I said a minute ago, a couple of agencies that I'm speaking to, they've just suddenly been ghosted. Their client has literally just gone off the face of the earth. Everything seems to be there, but no one's responding. What kind of considerations are there from that legal route point of view, assuming they've come to Glaciers and had their contract airtightly put together?
Yeah, I mean, you can have everything written down on paper, but at the end of the day, it's only a piece of paper, or not even that, because it's probably a digital piece of paper floating around in the cloud somewhere. But you've got your protections in there. It's still a business. It's still a relationship. It's still about communication. So you might not want to enforce your rights that you've got in a brilliantly drafted contract because you don't want to upset the client. But at the end of the day, communication with that client, we can't act as a bank. We're not here to lend you money. You owe us money. We've got some valuable intellectual property rights that you need. You need for your business going forward. So you've got to get in touch with us. And at the end of the day, if you don't, that's what we're here for, I suppose. The client.
That's why that phone rings 24/7.
Yeah, they get a letter, even if it's a very nice, polite letter that's on a law firm letterhead. You tend to get a response then. But like I say, know what your rights are, understand what the risks are, communicate with your client, communicate with your advisors.
Awesome. And then Ginny, so in terms of, I don't want to go on the ghosting thing too much, but like I say, it is relatively raw for me at the minute, having to hear it so much. It's 3 times in a week or so that these poor people who run businesses have, in good faith, done good work, and they're thinking, am I going to get the rest of this 12-month contract paid out over the next few months? How are you? What kind of considerations do you kind of think of from your own business that you run, but also mapping that into agencies? What happens there?
Yeah, it's quite tricky for us in the sense that one of our USPs is we're mega flexible with that, because that we know that happens for agencies. The nature of agency beast is they could all of a sudden lose a key client overnight, and the impact for that. I saw an agency recently, last couple of months, who lost one key client, and the knock-on effect was 16 redundancies because of one client.
Yeah,
and that's really
okay.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think the couple of takeaways from those kind of scenarios is, first one, don't rush to hire. I think like I was going back to before, that headcount for vanity and headcount for fear, because you feel like you need the boots on the ground. Don't worry that you need people in-house. Just make sure you have a really deeply knitted in brilliant kind of project management or client services, or however you deem that pool of people internally to sort it from an internal perspective, and have this support network of external specialists who can lean on when you do win a big tender and it goes the other way. So I think in terms of how you can navigate that, it's actually really tricky for freelancers, and we don't have the answer quite yet, because we're often at the very bottom of the rung as well. Because, you know, when a client's dealing with losing huge amounts of clients, it's the freelancer at the bottom of the pile of the thought process. So
sadly, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah.
So go on.
So all I was going to sort of say is so we deal with a lot of the claims where people, the agency will look to chase money for the different things, and then sometimes it will turn into the client will make up all these different things that are not right to be able to get out of paying it. But my point sort of is, and this is probably for, I'd be interested in Ginny's take on this, is a lot of the time they have to chase for this money because they've already agreed to pay X to the consultants, the contractors who need to be paid. And a lot of the time, again, as sort of has been mentioned before, if you're a freelancer, this money is far more important to you theoretically than if you're a big agency. So I don't know how often you get disputes like that where the end client is obviously being an arse, making things up to not pay it, but that's putting the agency in a awkward position in the middle, because they know that obviously there's people who've mortgages and stuff to pay that are relying on them paying them.
There's always someone in a chain somewhere along the line, and ultimately this is why the paper / not paper exists. This is why the insurance exists. This is why the planning exists and things like that. Now, I didn't realize that we've managed to talk about insurance contracts and operations for over 46 minutes, guys. So just if we can have a very quick, what's your one quick fire final take this away, and your this will help you in the long term tip. For me, it's set up some ops that actually have some simple to follow numbers on them that are repeatable. Danny, what are you thinking?
It's on the same theme, Chris, but it's risk management. It's take the time regularly to look at how you deal with your employees and how you deal with your clients and contractors. Know where the risks lie. If somebody experiences a problem or a hole, make a note of it and see what you need to do. But keep that risk register there. Are you compliant with the laws? Listen to some more of these excellent webinars on the OMG Center. You'll get lots of good tips. Go on the Advertising Standards Agency's website. They give you excellent compliance tips. You'll be able to learn quickly by just keeping up to date, attending webinars and looking for information on. Regulators are not the enemy. Yes, they do enforce things, but they're also there to train and help. So just be aware of the risks and see where you can get help from. Yeah.
Michael, what are your kind of closing big tips apart from buy the right insurance? Because I hope that's obvious right after hearing from you.
Yeah. So as is going to be centered a little bit around insurance, but then it's also got it can be it's wider than that. It's the communication. It's conveying information, and it's doing it proactively. It's doing it regularly, but also making sure the right people are conveying the information. So from an insurance perspective, it's fine to have a numbers person giving information, but they might not know what the actual deliverables actually are. And those deliverables might actually affect whether things are covered or not. So I would suggest it's like a sort of mentality that you proactively want to get across what you're doing. You proactively want to do that, and you want to do it from a full holistic sort of perspective, and welcome that, and welcome the comfort that comes from, we've done that. We've proactively done that. We've spent the time. We've got together. Our insurers know exactly what they're doing, or whatever other supplier. They know what we're doing. They know what we need. They know what that sort of proactive overall, where all the different stakeholders are in there to make sure that the right information is put across. That's the one thing.
Love it.
Very, very rambling. Inarticulate.
It was a beautiful ramble, Michael. It was a beautiful ramble.
Ginny, makes sense to me.
It did. Ginny, what should people take away from you?
Don't rush to hire. Don't rush to add that financial pressure of additional headcount on the bottom line, additional impact to the culture of the business. You don't know if that person's going to have an impact on the people and the people in the business. And I thought Michael summed it up really well in terms of it will get sorted. And there are people out there who can help you get these things sorted. The people in the interim community, myself included, are there to soundboard your recruit. Do you need that headcount? And if you do, what does that look like? Don't feel you have to approach those kind of, hugely impact issues or problems on your own. You know, there's people like me, Michael and Danny out there specifically to help you through those times, and don't rush to solve a problem by yourself.
Absolutely. And anyone watching this now or later, these guys, they do know what they're talking about. You've just proven yourselves to be true there. Contact details on the screen. Thanks so much for coming on, guys. It's been brilliant to talk to you, and hopefully see you on another webinar or in person at some of our own events.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks,
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Chris.